We're also going to be launching a Trustpilot and testimonial specifically for Enigma and all of the NFTs and all of that, which I think will have mixed reviews, but that's okay. And that will be actually quite useful for people because we are still working on the fractional stuff. We are going to launch more fractional collections in a proper manner, which I think is quite in demand. Actually, I think a lot of people told me that they are keen to buy some. The rewards for testimonials, no, they haven't happened yet, and I haven't had time. Honestly, I've been quite busy on some stuff, but I will try get them over and done with in the weekend or past the weekend. But here's Joe. So I guess we can get to the meat of it, and we can start recording and doing all of that. Joe, if you just want to do a mic test.
Hello, hello.
All good, loud and clear. Cool.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe. Before you go, I just want to make sure that we're recording for the people that are not here. Because
Yeah,
usually people
no
ask.
problem.
So do we have beer louder? Can you record? Oh, you are. Thank you. Cool. Joe, we can go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for waiting. I'm not sure, Heli, if you've already described the situation, but
No, Joe,
yeah,
I thought I would let you give the full context. I didn't want to mess anything up, so I just spoke about.
Yeah, no problem. I was actually referring to why I'm about 15 minutes late.
Oh yeah, we just looked at the wrong time. Yeah, that's okay. I told them that.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So, thank you guys for joining. We're always excited to see people are still tuned, listening, paying attention. It's a lot more difficult to manage expectations and to manage really collectively the whole Discord when there are a lot of people missing from these AMAs who don't have the full context, and then suddenly 2 years later, someone drops in and starts asking questions.
That's what I was just
vacuum of
saying
context.
before. Yeah.
And it tends to happen, and for some reason, it's happening quite frequently the last month or two, and I'm not sure why, because it's not like the NFT space has made any form of recovery. But anyways, so the purpose of this AMA is to give some status updates. And I'll touch on every aspect of the operation, but mostly we'll start with Paraguay and focus on that. Then give just brief updates on other things, just because everything sort of affects each other. And I'm sure everybody is curious what's been going on outside of Paraguay as well. After that, we will just dive into questions. I don't have that much time because I actually was allocating the 8 p.m. Eastern time. Anyways,
which for context,
so starting with Paraguay.
Oh, sorry, go on, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
No, you. I have delay, so I cut you off. Go ahead.
Okay,
I was just gonna say that we messed up the event. Yeah, go.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty bad lag between us. I'm gonna just get started talking about Paraguay. Just let me know if I'm cutting up. I did switch my cellular utility provider, so we're no longer with T-Mobile. I think that's probably the best move since 3 years ago, really. So, what's funny actually? So I switched to Verizon because T-Mobile's reception was chronically poor, and Verizon is much stronger. But it's fun. It's almost like a choice between having chronically bad reception, but always having to some extent reception, or having great reception acutely and then having blackouts like 3 times a week. I don't know what's going on with these phone carriers, but anyways. So regarding Paraguay, I'm going to give a brief overview. We started placing orders for Paraguay in the summer of 2023. In the early part of the summer, we were expecting a 2 to 3 month shipping timeline. Most things landed between 3 and 6 months. The first shipments got into Paraguay in about mid-August last year, and the vast majority of them trickled in between October and December. In August, we had powered on the very first batch of miners. Later, which wasn't many, I think it was about 100 miners or maybe even less. A few weeks later, we managed to bring online maybe another 100 to 200. So there was incremental but small progress. And then in the first quarter of this year, we peaked at about 500 miners online from a total of 1,094. The company that we contracted and signed agreements with in March of last year to execute the operations in Paraguay, which is a requirement because you needed a local provider to interface with the energy provider. That company has been failing miserably at delivering everything from shipping timelines to understanding.
Joe, you're sounding very far away from the mic if that's what you're doing, or if it's a signal.
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Slightly.
Is it better?
Yeah, way better now. Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry, there's gonna be background noise because again, I wasn't planning for this time slot, so I am in the car and it can be loud. Anyways, so we all along the way we were trying our best to damage control. We were in a situation where, if we arbitrarily say we have 100 clients in Paraguay that we are servicing, we could say 50 of them were suffocating because their machines are not online, and the other 50 were barely breathing, figuratively speaking. And in order for us to reach the ultimate solution where everybody can be breathing, it required that the 50 that were barely breathing would also start suffocating for an undetermined period of time. AKA relocate. And we were very hesitant to relocate until we have reached a point of honestly, it just seemed that we are not going to make enough progress, and it just wasn't justified anymore to try to damage control. And we've decided we have to start moving. We identified a better location with better rates, more consistent delivery. A location where we have miners for publicly traded companies like Marathon and Bitfarms, and we had decided this is probably the most suitable and most reliable place to relocate to. The relocation process began just I'd say end of March. Sorry, not end of March, end of April. So it's been all of May and now almost all of June. The relocation process consists of first terminating contracts, which can be very messy. So that part took a lot longer than we wanted. Of course, when you're dealing with people, you're also dealing with their personalities, and sometimes that causes a lot of issues. So we definitely ran into that. We then have to unrack everything, which again is contingent on people working with you. And so again, we're dealing with people who are being difficult, so that process took long. We then need logistics and carriers that can manage 1,094 miners, which a place like Paraguay, it's not as forthcoming as if you were in North America, where they have these logistic companies and it's a competitive market. You have 30 options. In Paraguay, you have maybe 2 options, and then when you're in such a rural area in Paraguay, it makes it more difficult, more expensive, more time consuming. So we're basically at the part where we're preparing miners to be put into these carriers and then moving. That part is taking a while. We anticipate that once we do have them in carriers, I mean, we know the distance, so it's just basic math. We expect it to be no longer than a week, and installations, again, this part is contingent on people. It's supposed to take a week. It could take longer. That's why we placed the timeline in mid-July. So that's the updates with the situation in Paraguay. If there's anything I missed, again, you guys can ask during the open floor for questions. Outside of Paraguay, things in North Carolina have been performing significantly better than the market average. We continue to have uptime close to 90%. And when I say 90%, I'm talking about all hours in a year, not just eligible hours. Most hosting companies, when they tell you 95% uptime or 98% uptime, they're talking about the hours that they're not curtailing or the hours they're not load shedding, which sometimes those hours can be as much as 20% of the year. So for us, when I say 90%, I'm talking almost every hour of the year. 90% of those hours we're operating. So North Carolina is actually performing exceptionally well. Now the energy rates there are not great. They've gotten worse because it's the summer. But even then, the rates for most of our clients there we have maintained constant. Even though that's not producing any revenue for Alteri, we just continue to honor those rates as much as we can. In terms of if we had to actually stratify the performance based on the digital assets that are being mined in North Carolina, obviously Bitcoin suffers the most, but when compared to the market average, we're still performing well. So that's always really the best indicator of performance and operation. And the second thing, Litecoin and Dogecoin also performing exceptionally well. If anyone's familiar with the EMF1 collection, you already know. I think based on recent calculations, we're close to maybe breaking the 50% return mark, maybe higher. I'm not entirely sure, but it's done well. And then obviously Caspa, everybody knows that's just been doing exceptionally well. Also, most people who've been mining Caspa with us since last year are close to breaking even, if haven't already broken even. Obviously, very dependent on whether they're trading their Caspa, selling it, whatever they're doing with it. So those are collections: EMF3, 3.5, and a bunch of buy and host clients also in North Carolina mining Caspa. So all of them are doing great. We don't have any interruptions in North Carolina. We don't have any power problems there. So I'm clarifying what to most of you probably sounds like obvious knowledge, but sometimes the context between our operations in Paraguay and outside get misconstrued or conflated. So the problems in Paraguay clearly are just isolated to that region and that operation. We had recent expansions in Texas. We've had some successful funding and raises to expand Alteri's operations, much larger scales in Texas. North Carolina is about 4 megawatts. Paraguay was about 4 megawatts. We had a 2 megawatt overflow site that we tried to start in Iowa. We decided, after 2 months that we're going to move out and just move them all to Texas. So up until 3-4 months ago, I would say we were about 8 megawatt operation, and now with the expansions in Texas, we're looking upwards of 20 to 30 megawatts. But of course, a lot of that still needs to be constructed and developed. So in Texas, we're going to be moving a lot of machines, a lot of Bitcoin machines, potentially Litecoin machines. We'll be moving them as well to Texas, just so that we can translate a lot of the benefits and the savings that we're going to get from the more competitive energy rates in Texas to a lot of our collections and a lot of our clients. Most likely, we're going to maintain Caspa in North Carolina, though. So everything is looking strong in terms of performance and operations, minus Paraguay. And we're just hoping Paraguay resolves in July. I think this is a good place to stop, Howie. If you had any questions that you wanted that people have been posing, I can also answer.
No, there's been the questions that they were asked I already answered, but I think now that we've opened it up and you finished speaking, I think people are gonna start coming with questions, so we can do that quick. Yeah, there's like 3 people typing now, so. Joe, just check your DM for a sec.
Okay, one sec.
Okay, Joe, I think I'll read out to you. And then
Okay, sounds
I
good.
can also answer some questions that I can go ahead and do that. Are there more machines available for purchase on the buy and hold side? Yes, we're selling machines constantly. If anyone wants to reach out to me, they can do anytime, and I'll walk you through the options based on what you're looking for. So yeah, we are selling machines. Joe, there's the questions on when Texas will go live.
Texas is already live, starting, well, not already, I guess. Well, starting in the first week of July, but the capacity is going to come online incrementally. The costs of construction are very steep. So to build out, 12 megawatts, we would need to spend $2.5 million. We obviously don't have that, so we have to raise funds every time we want to construct ahead of time. So we're between building capacity as we go on demand. So we'll have in July about 3 megawatts. We anticipate by August we might have up to 6.
Gotcha. Cool. I think that answers the question pretty well. Yeah. Now there's a question, and I think you mentioned this briefly in the last announcement you put out, Joe. But what is being done to soften the blow on those miners in Paraguay? I assume soften the blow to the investors and the people that purchased.
Yeah, so I think the priority first is to regain control over the miners, set them up, and make sure that they are mining reliably, consistently, and at rates that are more competitive. I think we've already identified the location. It's going to be an energy rate that's about, I think it was close to 15% cheaper energy rate. So right at 5 cents, maybe right below 5 cents. So the first thing we're going to do after that is we're going to eliminate all of the service fees. So when we're managing these machines, there are operational costs that are incurred to the company managing the machines. Salaries paid, maintenance, labor, all of that stuff is usually factored into service fees. So we're going to eliminate all that. It's just going to be the base rate that we get billed. Which should be around 5 cents. We're going to eliminate the profit share as well. So there's literally 0 service fees, and we're going to do that for the lifetime of the machine. I think that is a huge value over time. It might be hard to quantify now, but typically for Bitcoin machines, depending on the difficulty, now is not the best time to it's not the best time to make this assessment because the energy portion of the yield for Bitcoin is like 80 to 90%. But previously, it historically averages around 60%. And of that 60%, you could probably assume half of that is a markup. So, you could say 20 to 30% of the yield is usually going to service fees. And that's something we would be able to save for everybody. For the lifetime of the machines, which these machines are not brand new, but they also haven't really mined. So they're kind of, you could call them light new. The date on their serial numbers are older, but their actual intrinsic properties and their circuits and the silicon, all of that stuff is close to pristine, at least should be. So they should live. They should live close to their lifetime for mining. That's the first thing. The second thing is, again, depending on how the situation goes, we are looking into taking loans for other purposes, but we are thinking of also allocating part of those loans to buying high profitability ASICs, which are basically just Caspas right now. And these Caspas, if you think about it, for every dollar you put into a Caspa machine, it's like you're putting almost $8 into a Bitcoin machine. So if theoretically speaking, there was $1 million worth of Bitcoin miners that needed to be augmented, then, like just a little over 100,000 put into Caspas would produce the yield of $1 million worth of Bitcoin machines. So that's something we're really looking into because it's a very viable way to augment the yield. And those are the two primary ways. At one point, we had considered maybe removing machines, putting them in Texas, all that stuff, but we realized that's only going to incur a lot more cost before we can get to the part where we can start facilitating this redemption, and it seems counterproductive. So always open to ideas if people have suggestions or ideas, of course, within the realm of reason, and also business viability.
Yeah, I mean, just to provide context, I mean, it's kind of a crazy proposition for a company to not take any fees. I think everyone can agree on that, given the fact that we've also obviously incurred a lot of fees. So I hope people understand that this is quite a big thing that we're doing for them, obviously, which is deserved given the time that we've spent, but it should be taken into account that it is a thing that not many will do. Cool. Let's move on to next questions or follow-up questions because people are typing and we're not getting through a lot. What we're looking at. Let's see one from the Namo. What's a rough idea on what the cost is per miner to move from North Carolina to Texas and be set up?
In general, transporting domestically, usually you're paying around, and this cost will average down if you ship a lot more machines per instance, but you're looking at probably between 150 on average to maybe $200 a machine, if you're not shipping many. But if you ship a lot, you could probably get down to 100, somewhere close to 100.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, this is more so a kind of, I guess, a point to discuss or mention, but so Sleazy is saying that he's not sure how much of a kickback or exception is going to help Bitcoin miners in Paraguay. I mean, Joe already mentioned that removing these fees is already a huge chunk more revenue, and the 5 cents is a huge chunk more revenue. So beyond just that, there's not much more we could do, apart from obviously the loan or some of the money from the loan that we're going to put towards Castle miners for the people that were impacted. How and when that will be set up and how it will work, we're going to obviously announce. We're not going to promise to say anything now because the market changes and things change. But I think as much of a thing as beyond like just giving you money and being on a loss, which is not useful for anyone, just removing those fees is already pretty big. Obviously, the situation is not ideal, but it's still something. So yeah. There's not really questions. It's more so discussion. So people, if you have questions, please do type them out. This will be recorded, Sandstorm, so you're not gonna necessarily miss anything out.
So just to make a comment on what Sleazy's saying, Sleazy's being very, what's the word here? Maybe in the way that he's thinking practical, I'd say. I don't think what he's saying is meant as criticism of the potential solutions we're trying to create. I think he's just thinking practically about the situation, and it's true that the halving is going to affect and complicate the discourse of all miners. And if there were miners that lost opportunity before the halving, then after the halving, if the math was proportional, where your profit went from 2 to 1, then you would expect for every month delayed pre-halving, it would take 2 months to catch up post-halving. But that's not even the case, because the profit doesn't get slashed by 50%. The profit, because it's a calculation that that's contingent on the yield and the cost. When the cost is the same and the yield goes down by half, the profit suffers a lot more than half. So just to again give just an arbitrary example, if your yield's $100 a month and your energy cost is 50, pre-halving you're making $50 a month. If the halving now happens, your yield is $50, your energy is still $50, your profit is zero. So you went from making $50 a month to $0 a month. So that's not a halving of your profit. That's a negative 100%. So the flip side is it works the same way in reverse, right? So now say that your yield went from, because Bitcoin went from X to 2X post halving, now you went from $50 yield post halving and zero profit to $100 yield and $50 profit again, right? And so you went from zero with the doubling of Bitcoin, your profit went from 0 to 50. So, or say 1 to 50, that's a 50x. It's not a double, right? So profit is asymmetrically influenced by Bitcoin's price post halving. That's the point. So yes, you may not be able to catch up with pre-halving with the time that was lost pre-halving, but that could also not be the case because the way that Bitcoin's price action can affect the yield post-halving or the profit post-halving. So it's again one of those situations where you can be practical and take on that outlook and say, well, the pre-halving months were the best, but we just don't know what the future is, and that is a line of thinking that affects everybody, whether you were delayed or not. And if anybody wants to go and look, just to get more context, how many months were missed pre-halving, then you have to start asking the question, well, what is an appropriate shipping timeline between North Carolina and Paraguay in the peak of summer transit, with the Panama Canal closing down and capping vessels to 32 per day? Then you start getting into these questions, which are out of everybody's control. And if we ship things in June and we expect a 2 to 3 month shipping transit when things are going according to plan, so what is that? June plus, let's say, 3 months, you're now looking at being in September. Okay, when did the machines actually get there? In December, right? So what is that? 3 months that they've so from December to today would be 6 months. How many of those months were post-halving? 2 months. So how many months were pre-halving? 3 months. Now, if you want to start adjusting for the delays in the summer transit, who's to say whether 6 months is an appropriate timeline during the summer or 5 months? So there's all these question marks, and very quickly you can go from I should have mined for 4 months to, well, I guess I should have only mined for 2 months, or it's a zero-sum game in my opinion, because we could mine for 2 more years and things can change.
Yeah, I mean, that is a lot of insight and context. So I hope that cleared up a lot for people. I was reading chat. I still am reading chat. There is nothing really new that maybe I've missed out. There was a joke about dashboard, but that's different.
Don't utter those words, okay?
It's
we have bigger problems than that.
I once lost my 3-month salary for mentioning that word to Joe in a meeting, so I'll do it again.
We just have bigger problems than dashboard.
Yeah. The thing is, that's the thing that people don't realize. Dashboard is very far down the list of things to do.
Let's put it this way. I mean, people mining in North Carolina don't have a dashboard and never ask for a dashboard. Why? Because things are working. When things don't work,
very good point.
When things don't work, people want dashboard because they're thinking to themselves, what's going on? What's really happening? Dashboard is more like a proxy for transparency more than anything. If people are getting paid out consistently, if the operations are in Paraguay were working according to plan, dashboard wouldn't really be a topic.
That's
But
a
again,
very, very good
I
point.
would love a dashboard. I'm all
I
for
would
a
love a
dashboard.
good ass dashboard. Yeah, I've surely spent enough time on thinking about one and about to get one, but then yeah, you're very right. I think literally all of this project's problems are Paraguay. If Paraguay never happened, we would be in a much better place. But that's just a reality of the situation. We can't change that. We just have to do our best to go about it and fix it.
Yeah, I would also add to that statement that mostly Paraguay. The market's been pretty shit since we launched Enigma's
Yeah, I mean,
Genesis collection. So, but yeah, I mean the
it's been
market will fix itself, and um, it's getting better for sure.
do you want to comment on payout schedule? I mean,
Yeah, the problem with payout schedule is the energy company delays bills. Like they're supposed to
yeah,
give us our bill anytime from the 1st to the 6th. This is North Carolina. Now it's going to be very different in Texas. They're much more strict. There are a lot of penalties in Texas. If you miss a day in Texas, you could end up with penalties of $100,000 depending on your capacity. So in Texas, you have to run a very tight ship. And the corollary is that the entities working with you are running tight ships because there's a much narrower margin for error. In North Carolina, they're just whack. They're honestly one of the
they're just taking
worst.
the piss. Yeah, they're taking the piss, as we say.
It's not a late fee. So for example, in Texas, in order for you to get a rate that's fixed, which we need to get a fixed rate because it's really hard to run a hosting company without fixed rates. You can do fixed rates in Texas because it's a deregulated market and there's not a bunch of people in their button up t-shirts and ties meeting once every 3 months deciding whether utilities are too cheap. So in Texas, you could get a fixed rate. To get a fixed rate, you generally want to participate in certain programs. Those programs require you to do certain things on their demand. And if they tell you, for example, in 30 minutes, I want you to turn off 5 megawatts for 6 hours, and you don't, they will charge you per hour some ridiculous fee per megawatt.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of the grid over there and the setup, right? They really need to have it sorted. Otherwise, Texas goes without power. So
Yeah, no, it's pretty insane. There's a few companies in post-COVID during the energy crisis, I think 2022, 23, where they had automations in place to turn off their capacity when when the market price of energy was above a certain threshold, and they lost network connection, and they were paying I think it was $8,000 a megawatt hour, which is like $80 a kilowatt hour. Um, so imagine that. So if you have like 1 megawatt running for 1 hour, you would probably be paying 800. I think it was like 800,000 or $80,000 per hour per megawatt. Yeah.
that would be a chaotic day in the office.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? I see a name wants to come up, but I think we'll take questions first, probably end the recording, and then we can have a more open chat with people about different topics.
Yeah. I'll have to head out in like 4 minutes. But if you want to bring him on in a minute, so in case he has questions.
Sure. Of course. All right. Any questions? Any feedback? Anything? Now is the time. Otherwise, we're gonna. I mean, not for the recording. We can carry on later if anyone wants to bring anything. Yeah. Looks like no. So thanks, guys. Appreciate the time. I think Amanda and I have discussed and keen to do this more often. So I think we're going to do it probably every week or every 2 weeks. So we'll see, but it will be much more often now that we have a much clearer path ahead in Paraguay, which took a long time to get, obviously, as you would know. So just a few people typing, but I think louder you can end it up here, mate. Thank you. Just confirm for me louder. Okay, done. All right, guys. Well, we're not recording anymore, so if anyone wants to come up or